All right. Well, I think we are live on Facebook. I'm looking here, and it looks like a go for the show. Um, my name is Tim Kane, and I'm, of course, the host of Tiki Tim's Trop-Roc Tributes. And it's a show, for those that haven't watched it before, dedicated to singer-songwriters around the country in the trop-rock, country trop-rock genre. And it's been going pretty well. I'm really excited this week to have yet another singer-songwriter, Mr. Dave McKenney. Dave, how you doing?
Doing good today. How are you?
I'm
Great.
fine. We'll talk about it in a little while. But my band leader in my band, the Island Castaways, loves summer. He loves the heat and humidity. The higher the heat index, the better. And I don't know if you're one of those guys too, but I look forward to fall. And it's up here in right outside Boston, Mass. It's pretty fallish right now. It's getting cooler. I took my dog on a walk today, and the leaves are changing colors, and it's kind of nice. I got to tell you, it was a hot summer.
Yeah, yeah. It's the same here. I spent 24 years of my life in the New England area, just outside of Boston, and I was, I guess, I was always a summer guy, but I don't remember the summers ever really being all that hot up there. And but of course, I played high school football, and then after I finished playing, we always looked forward to the fall. You know, Probably it's one of the seasons I think we always knew we could count on. Like we kind of knew what we were going to get because the spring, you never know. It could snow in April, you know, it could be hot, you know. Summer, I guess maybe was pretty, but it was pretty consistent. But the fall, and down here in Virginia, we have a beautiful fall season. I love it. I had my first pumpkin spice the other day. So,
Ah, nice, nice. The pumpkin. Well, let
yeah,
me tell our viewers a little bit about you. Of course, Dave's a singer-songwriter originally from New England, as he just alluded to. He's now based out of Virginia. You just learned that as well.
yeah.
Um, he's always had a love of music, and he spent time in his early years exploring different instruments, and then decided to play guitar. He started really quickly mastering, basic chord progressions. Started learning a lot of Jimmy Buffett tunes and other trop rock tunes. And right around 2007, he started performing at a few local venues in and around Richmond, Virginia. And since then, he's performed as far north as back here in New England, and as far south as Key West, and up to before the COVID ever, 150 performances yearly. I'm not going to go on with the bio because some of that's in my questioning,
Okay.
Dave.
All
But
right.
my first question really to you is, since you're from New England, what state in New England are you originally from?
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's my real question.
Yeah.
If you're from Massachusetts, then you're a New England Patriots fan. Are you still a New England Patriots fan?
I would say yes because I grew up when the team was not very good.
Well,
You know.
that was the great segue
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
was it
So,
when Drew Bledsoe was on, or is even
uh,
earlier than that with
it was
Grogan?
Grogan and a bunch of those other guys, and I'm drawing a blank on who some of the running backs were, and we had some pretty one every now and then I have a good lineman. Who was the tight end? There was a tight end that was pretty good for a while. I mean, but the team, in the '70s, they never seemed to be able to put it together. And then, of course, we went in through the '80s and '90s, and everybody knows the Tom Brady story. And I think,
Yeah.
look, Tom's great, but I think, for me, if somebody said to me, "Who's your team?" It's like, well, that's really my team. I mean, it always has been.
All right. Well, obviously it continues on with Mr. Cam Newton, who's
Yeah.
not doing too shabby right now at the QB position. We'll see how the season plays out. So let me ask you, after you moved to Richmond, you moved there with a guitar and a couple sets of music, right? Um, how were you able to transform your career and your playability out in local venues from just in Virginia to getting into Key West and getting all over the eastern United States? How did you
Yeah.
make that quantum leap?
Um, the first quantum leap was I left New England to go to Florida because I had a couch to sleep on, but it was actually pre-Guitar Days. So I hadn't yet quite started to play, although I was incessantly listening to Jimmy Buffett and other guys. I mean, I'd sort of kind of transgressed in my life at that point, back from full band stuff to more of singer-songwriter. So John Prine caught my ear, of course, early Jimmy Buffett stuff. But anyways, it started here for me. The journey to Key West started. There used to be a 3-day event called Stars on the Water here in Richmond, Virginia. It went on for 20 years. And the first time I went to Stars, I just went. And it was the first time that I saw some of the guys that most people know and have known for years. The James Whites, the John Frenzies, the Scott Kirbys. I saw Hugo Duarte when he was still around. The Calypso Nuts doing their thing on a Friday night, being the Friday night dance band. And then so around 2007, when I started to play out, setting my sights on that kind of a crowd, being such a fan of Jimmy, but knowing that Parrot Heads weren't just truly defined by Jimmy. They liked great music, 70s, 60s, all kinds of stuff. So I got booked on the 2008 Stars on the Water. And they would have a DJ on the first day for the first 3 hours where people were arriving and registering and getting set up. And I convinced the Parrot Head Club in Richmond to, instead of having a DJ just spinning tunes, how about I just make a bunch of noise for a couple hours? And they were like, sure. And I ended up playing that event for 5 years until they finally stopped doing it in 2014. So that was really, and seeing a lot of those performers, I mean, I sat and watched Scott Kirby for 3 hours, basically sing his own music and tell stories. And I was like, that's cool. I mean, that's what I want to do. And my journey, yeah, and I may jump, if I'm jumping ahead and revealing some of your questions, but after a couple of years of doing that, in 2010, after a conversation with Tall Paul, actually, about Meeting of the Minds, my perception of how you would get to Meeting of the Minds was a lot different than how it works. And Paul was kind enough to tell me that you pretty much, your first year at Meeting of the Minds, you're probably going to sleep in your car and eat bologna sandwiches. And you run around the island with a guitar and you try to find spots to play and you meet people. And so in 2010, I finally did it. And that sort of kind of led to meeting people from the state of Washington and going and playing Laid Back Attack and meeting Jerry Diaz and getting asked to play Party Girl and et cetera, et cetera. The New England convention. I met New England folks in Key West, and it was like, I'm from there. And they were like, well, let's have you come up and play. And so I got to play that event. So that's really kind of how it all started.
Well, thanks, Dave, for being on the show. You've answered all my questions.
Oh, I did?
No, you didn't. I'm just joking.
Yeah. Well, you never know. You give a guy a microphone and
yeah, I know. I know.
You can give me the hold on a second, I'm going to ask that sign if you want. Yeah.
Well,
I'll re-answer.
No, I like to get into like songwriting and music questions because that really is what, the bio and the background is really interesting and people want to hear that. But they all also want to hear about you as a songwriter.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So in exploring your music a little bit, and I do in the second part of this show, I get the honor of playing along to a few of your songs. But your first album, 4 Hour Lunch Break, I found had a lot of diverse musical styles on it. So tell me a little bit about the inspiration for that first album of yours.
Florida was a big inspiration on a lot of the songwriting. So a lot of those stories like The Inlet and Florida Kind of Sunday and Lazy are all influenced by Florida and my time there. The musical stylings, I mean, it was kind of like, well, I really, I like Jimmy Buffett a lot, but I really like anything prior to 1977, mostly, so from a production standpoint and instrumentation standpoint. And, that album was really done on a very shoestring budget. It was kind of like I had a lead guitar player, I had a drummer, a bass player, myself on rhythm, and that I found out the bass player played piano, so we put him on piano on a couple of songs. We didn't find that out until the end, but so yeah, I mean, as you listen to it, I mean, you might say to you, if somebody didn't know what they were listening to, they'd be like, well, this guy sounds maybe like Jimmy Buffett, but then there's maybe a little bit of Americana in there. Maybe a little bit of country in there. So, and it's just kind of me sort of going back to singer-songwriters that I like.
Well, I mean, writing one album is difficult enough. You've written three. I'm sure you have a lot of other tunes that you just haven't released yet. But how was 4 Hour Lunch Break, your first album, different from your next two releases, Back in Time, and I think your latest album's called Debts of Gratitude? How are they different? How are the three albums different, or are they not different?
Well, for Back in Time, I had a little bit more money, so then I was able to pull in like harmonica and Gary Green, who's he's a New England guy, longtime friend of Scott Kirby's, and I met him at a songwriter event, and he was playing with Scott, and Scott actually let me take his guitar and play a couple songs with Gary for the crowd. And then that, and Scott said, Gary now lives an hour west of me. And he said, this might be a good guy to have on your next album. And then Emily Randall, I met her, down in Key West. And so I was able to kind of broaden the production a little bit. But I think 4 Hour Lunch Break and Back in Time, the mix and diversity of songs where it's kind of hardcore, maybe sort of a Jimmy Buffett thing, and Americana country mix. I think those two albums have that same feel. The second album just has more instrumentation on it, and sometimes I listen to it and think there's too much, but that's just me. But Debts of Gratitude there was a bunch of songs that I was co-writing with people, because most of that album is co-writes. And they were sort of kind of just really morphing into like John Prine and Guy Clark. And so my goal on that album, what makes that album very different is I think the subject matter is completely Americana folky and very little bit of, it's not a Trop-Roc album at all, really. I mean, I don't even think there's a song on there that would fall under that palm trees, ocean type thing, margaritas or whatever, laid back. The feel is very laid back, but it's really, the goal was, let's make this thing sound like something John Prine would have done if he'd have written these songs and he was going to put them on a record. And so then it made sense to take John Prinzi up on an offer, which was, hey, I've got a home studio. I know how to play bass. I know how to play piano. I can sing harmony. We can do simple percussion. Why don't you come to Florida and record an album with me? You got songs? And he admittedly said he wanted to fine tune his home studio a little bit. So I was kind of like a practice run in a sense, where he's like, if you're patient with me, we could get this done. It's just not going to be maybe as efficient as a full-blown studio. But it was like, well, I can go down there and hang out for a couple of days, play some shows, go record, and go back to Virginia. So I ended up doing it 6 times. Going down there. So that's kind of really the difference.
Okay. That sounds fun.
It was super fun.
Going into a studio, hanging out, chilling, no pressure, and then playing gigs when you're not in the studio. I mean, it doesn't really get any better than that, does it?
It really wasn't. And it started in February of 2018. So when I left Richmond, it was probably, I left early in the morning. I would guess it was maybe 38 degrees. And by the time I got down to Florida, it was like 72, 73. There's always good coffee in the morning, and there's always some good rum in the afternoon. And I was playing the gigs I was playing. It was there's a brand new Landshark Grill, part of the Jimmy Buffett restaurants in Daytona. and they were gracious enough. I would book like 3-4 shows there and then head over and record. And then sometimes I'd do 2 shows, go record for 2 days, do 2 shows, go back, maybe do a house concert. So I did that all the way through. I did go down in July. That was a little crazy, but we needed to get some stuff done, and Landshark had some openings, and so I did go from Virginia to Florida in July, which typically I don't do that. I don't go to Florida in the summer very much. But yeah, it's hard to get better than that. You know what I mean? It was pretty darn fun.
Totally. I don't mean to put you on the spot. You know, I am a drummer.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, who was like, particularly on your first album, who was your drummer or drummers? And have you used the same studio guy, or do you kind of mix it up? I know you just mentioned on your subsequent albums you were doing more basic percussion, but you definitely had a drummer on your first album. He's really good. Who is he or she?
That's my I refer to him as a brother-in-law, but technically he is my wife's brother-in-law. So my wife's sister, her husband happens to be a drummer. And over the years, pretty much now, you know, he joins on any gig. I can put him on Cajon. We do a lot of stuff with him on Cajon. And we just solidified, this is kind of, I don't know how many people are watching, but or will see this, but I just firmed up Key West. And he, for the first time in 10 years, he's going to come down and join me. We're going to actually, the 4 of us are going to go down. So for the first album, I said, hey, I'm going to cut an album. And what do you think about being the drummer? Oh, that would be fantastic. Great. I said, what do you think about not getting paid? That's okay too. Don't worry about it. We'll make it up someday on the fly. And you know, I just said, hey, the budget's pretty tight, and there's some other guys that are, you know, and we're just trying to. But he said, you know what, I'd be happy to do it. I'm honored that you asked me. And then had him slated for Back in Time. If you listen close enough to Back in Time, you can tell there's 2 different drummers on there, and there's actually 2 different kits. We basically had the same situation where I said, hey, I'm doing an album, but I had a budget there, and I said, you know, I can slice out some of the budget for you. That'd be great. But he's working full time at the time, and when I was trying to coordinate with the studio, all but 1 session he was available for. So we ended up using another guy for the first 2 sessions, and then finally got him on the 3rd session, which was, I think, 4 songs that he got to play on. And
what was his name? Your brother?
Yeah, Jeff Knock. Jeff Knock. Yeah, Jeff Knock. Like you're knocking on a door.
Okay, Jeff Knock.
Yeah, long time musician out of grew up in Texas and played for years, and he's actually had the pleasure of doing a private corporate event on the Grand Ole Opry stage in Nashville with a band that they put together for a corporate event there. And I think they did it twice. And the first year, the headlining act was Martina McBride, and the second year was Winona Judd, and fantastic experience for him. And so we've been doing a lot of stuff that I don't know if you're going to ask about the 3rd album, so I'll wait.
Good segue. You know, everything you just said about your drummer. He's like a brother-in-law to you, Jeff Knock out of Texas. He's a great drummer from what I can hear, and to have that opportunity to play with you is an honor. And to get to Key West is gonna, you know, be so much fun for him. But tell me about your 3rd album, because that's let's see, that's Debts of Gratitude is the title, right?
Yeah. So are you curious about percussion on that one?
I am, because it definitely got more complex.
Well, the interesting thing is John Frenzy did all of it on a module that comes with Pro Tools, I guess it is, or whatever, through the keyboard, and did it all, dialed in Cajon, dialed in the kit for, I think we only used the full kit sound on 1 song, more than enough, the 2nd song. Everything else was pretty much tambourine and shaker, Cajon, a little bit of Latin percussion thrown in. And you know, there's a bunch of guys in Florida. I mean, you know, when I talked to Jeff about it, my brother-in-law, I mean, he lives only a mile away here, so he's in Virginia. He doesn't live in Texas, but you know, I said, oh, you could jump in the car and we could get down there, and you know, but it's like, you know, I get to sleep on the couch of the home studio, and I'd have to put him in a hotel. And I said, you know, and it's really all just going to be very laid back percussion. So I just don't know if it makes sense. And then another conversation with John Frenzy was, I don't think we need a drummer. I mean, we got Jimmy Pappas an hour away. We got several guys in Florida that could come over and we could do that. He says, but I think I can get it done using technology. And I said, as long as it sounds okay, let's do it that way.
Are you happy with that result? I mean, I do a little. I got Logic Pro X, and I do a little recording.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with definitely using like M Audio through an interface and that kind of thing. Were you happy with the results on not using per se a drummer specialist, but using a musician programming drums in? And I agree with you. The sounds and the presets they have now are phenomenal. But
other than a good hang with a good, you know, for me the studio's a good hang. So like when we did Back in Time, I mean, we just hung out and got pizza and just cut stuff, and guys would step up and do the leads. And, you know, Emily came down from DC and jumped on fiddle. And then, I mean, it's just a good hang. So other than missing the good hang with my brother-in-law, I'm real happy with the way it sounds. Sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, I just can't even believe that's technology. And I think it's an efficient way. When you need to do it, I think it's an efficient way to get it done. Although I'm more of a purist, and I don't know that I'll do it again unless I do another album that's like Debts of Gratitude, where we don't really need much more than shaker and cajon and Latin and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, when you play out live as like a solo artist or a duet, you now have these great sounding backing tracks that you can use on stage. I mean, are you employing that? I mean, are you doing some of that, or?
No, you know, no, I haven't gotten there yet because I've always had this deer in the headlights thought that I would not remember the way the track goes. And I was out in the Ozarks last summer doing Trop-Roc in the Ozarks, the initial event for that. It was the summer of 2019. And Paul Rausch and I did a Sunday morning brunch in the round singer-songwriter show. And I started what I thought was the third verse of one of my songs, and I got through the first line and I realized I was re-singing the second verse. And I learned a long time ago from seeing some very seasoned songwriters that that's okay. And it's actually okay to kind of stop a little bit. Don't stop the song, just stop what you're doing singing-wise, play some guitar, and actually admit to it and restart it over. Keith Sykes is brilliant at it. And I opened for Keith a couple times. He's brilliant at it. And, you know, as good as he is, sometimes he'd be, whoops, nope, that's not right. You know, and Keith's just really good. So the long and short of it is when I finished, so I went back and did the third verse. And when I finished, Paul Roche goes, you see, that's the reason that we don't use backing tracks, because you wouldn't be able to do that if you had a backing track.
You're talking false starts. Infamous false starts.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Never stop playing, even if you make a mistake out of the gates. You can't stop. You just got to find your way, and like you just said very wisely, just repeat that intro or that first verse structure with no vocals, no lyrics, and just everyone finds their way back in. Tempo-wise, if the tempo's off or there's a wrong chord progression or whatever.
But sure. That's what makes some of the best bands in the world. I think the Coral Reefer Band is probably one of the best bands in the world, not only because they're just world-class musicians, but, you know, I don't think, you know, I think, you know, Jimmy's been notorious for, or famous for making up words and all that. And I think sometimes he's doing it on the fly. Sometimes he does it on purpose. But there's a lot of times I think he might go back into a chorus when they're supposed to go through another line or they're not supposed to. And those guys are so good at just following him and making him, you know, look good. And that's a prime example of just keep it rolling, do something. Don't, you know, obviously don't stop, you know.
I tell my drum students all the time, never stop. it's one of the things that makes a difference between you being an amateur and being a professional is being able to cover
Yeah.
your tracks. Because most
Yeah.
people that aren't trained would never know the difference, and you know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Hey, so I read, and you're obviously Dave's got a great website, DaveMcKenneyMusic.com, where you can find all his music, his bio, everything you need to know about him, where gigs are coming up. But did I read in there that you've written a novel?
No, I was in a novel.
You were in a novel. Now,
I was in a novel.
what was it?
So
Fiction?
yes, it's John H. Cunningham, uh, who's also a co-writer of mine on Back in Time record on 2 songs and Debts of Gratitude on 1 song. He's also written with Tom Shepard, Matt Hoggett, and Keith Seitz songs. But he also has a series of novels about a character named Buck Riley. And I believe book number 9 just came out. But book number 6, right before, while he was writing book number 6, he and I started writing for the first time. We had met in Virginia and then reconnected in Key West in 2015. And we both threw out the, hey, we should write together. And then I saw him in Key West and we reconfirmed that. And then all of a sudden in 2016, the opportunity for a song came about. So the song that's in the novel is Long View Off a Short Pier.
All right, so that's book or series number 9. So let me ask you.
That's in 6. That's in book 6.
That's in 6.
Yeah.
So how did the royalties work for you as a character in the book?
I don't think they work. I stayed at his house a couple times in Key West, and he treated me to coffee. And that's okay because he surprised me with that. He said, "Hey, I'm going to use you and the song Long View Off a Short Pier in Free Fall to Black," which was novel number 6. And I mean, it already, basically been written and was off to the editor for proofread or whatever they call it, and then I got a copy of the book and he sent me a copy of the book. And it's just a short blurb in the end where I'm the guy playing in Key West and I'm actually playing that song and it has some of the lyrics in it and all that. And it was just, and it gives credit to the album and all of that and the fact that he was a co-writer on the song.
That's cool. Well, I mean, obviously those in the Trop-Roc genre in the industry know the value of Parrot Head clubs, Finns and Parrot Head clubs. We all work with them, and it's an essential relationship. Tell me about the time when you went, and I think you did a Parrot Head club gig at Meeting of the Minds. Give me a story from there that's not X-rated.
Just in general, or was there one that I specifically mentioned?
Just one that pops into your mind. Tell me a story from Meeting of the Minds, something that just stuck with you over the years. It could be just a stage performance or something crazy that happened back at the hotel room,
Well, here, okay, so the song Let Me Drink This Beer First on Back in Time, I had Toby Keith in mind. And in the studio, we tried to make it sound like something maybe he would cut and my co-writers are 2 friends of mine who are not songwriters or musicians, but they just had this idea about a friend of theirs. And that's how Let Me Drink This Beer First. And it's about a guy who is very helpful. So if you need him to cut your grass or help you move a piece of furniture, he's willing to do it, but you got to wait until he finishes his beer because he's always got a beer in his hand. And so we put that song together and we put it on Back in Time, and we always joked, we got to get this to Toby Keith. And in 2016, when I was releasing the album at Meeting of the Minds, that's when Toby Keith showed up and played at the Casa Marina. And I was on a balcony behind the stage, but when I took a picture, it looked like I was backstage, and I posted it on Facebook saying, "This is awesome." My co-writers were on the 10 rows back from the stage, and they sent me a text and said, "Are you backstage? You got to get give the CD to Toby. And I said, no, I'm not backstage. No chance. Fast forward about 2 hours, and we're getting ready to go have some dinner at Blue Heaven with John Cunningham, who I wrote. And I parked my bike and I walked in the back end of Blue Heaven, and I came around the bar, and standing on stage with the local band is Toby Keith singing Folsom Prison Blues, which wound up on YouTube.
So did you deliver your CD to him there?
So before I even had a thought, John Cunningham says, give me one of your CDs. I had my duffel bag with me, and I gave it to him. Toby had gotten off stage, and he was walking, and they was getting ready to go have dinner upstairs with some of the Coral Reefer band. And we heard him say to Richard, who owns Blue Heaven, he said, hey, Mac and a couple of the Reefers are joining us. And Richard said, we have a table upstairs for you. And he said, great. And they walked up, him and Scotty Emmerich walked up, and John Cunningham followed him up, walked up to the table and handed him the CD. Meanwhile, I'm texting my co-writers, and they think I'm lying. They're like, you're lying. Don't mess with us. They're like, do not mess with us. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. And anyways, we sat down to have dinner, and we waited forever, because I said to John, I said, we got to wait to see if that CD was just a coaster for his beer or if he's actually going to keep it.
Oh, that's classic.
And finally, John Cunningham looks at me and goes, I got to go to bed, brother. And I was staying at John's house, and he said, I got to go to bed. I can't wait any longer. They were up there forever. We saw Mac go up there and a couple others go up, and and finally I gave up. And so to this day, the song has never been cut. No one's ever reached out to me. So he didn't steal it from me. He didn't ask me if he could cut it to pay me the royalties. So I'm going to assume my CD was a coaster for his drink, and he left it behind. He was very gracious to John. He was really nice to John Cunningham, and he thanked him, and he commented on the album picture. He liked the cover, and he asked him if that was him, and John said, no, it's my buddy. And you know, all I saw was John Cunningham just take off, and I was like, oh shit. Excuse me. I was like, yeah, should I go up there? What's he doing? And he came back down. He says, well, I gave it to him. So there you go. And that was it.
That's a good story, I got to tell you. Hey, so we're quickly running out of time. We're a little bit over, but it's all right. No one's timing us.
Yeah.
What's next for you during the COVID era? What have you been working on to try to set yourself up for, 2021?
Well, I did a lot of live stuff like everybody else to try to stay in touch with people. And I did a couple where I partnered with some friends of mine who had lost a lot of gigs. I hadn't really lost that many. I hadn't started booking my summer yet. I knew that I probably wasn't going to have the kind of summer that I normally have, but I had some friends who had lost 50, 60 shows. And so I partnered and said, hey, let's do some stuff where in the tip jar, I'll go to you. And then whenever I went live, people would hit me with Venmo, and I'd support a local restaurant for dinner. And then some vineyard and, some wineries and shows and started coming around. And so I've actually had not a bad summer. It's been fine. And of course, I just today, within Wednesday to today, solidified that I am actually going to go down to Key West during the non-Meeting of the Minds week and do some stuff for Beachfront Radio and some other stuff that I do. So
nice. When is that? What week is that? You
that'll be. We'll get to Key. I'll get there October 27 through. I'll leave November 1. A lot of people will get into town on the 26th, that Monday. Some might get into town on the 25th, but. And there's a lot of guys are still going down. There's some great events that are going on, some songwriter stuff, and Beachfront very gracious to invite me yet again. And they're doing actually more stuff this year than they've ever done. Just I guess probably because of the the fact that there isn't something going on up at the Casa Marina. And that'll take me into you asked me earlier, you made a comment that I probably have a bunch of songs that haven't been recorded, and there's at least 10 or 11. that I'm fine tuning them, making sure they're where I want them to be. And then when the time is right, I hope to get, the plan would be to get back in. I've always kind of taken the philosophy that meeting of the minds is the best time to release an album. So I've always done that. So if I follow that course, it would be recording through 2021 and then going down in November and having the CD available. And I think I might follow that course. I don't know that I'll break that trend. Just seems to always kind of work out,
Sounds like a good plan. So I got one more question for you. You've been a great guest, Mr. Dave McKenney.
Thank you.
For our viewers, and again, this will be rebroadcast and shared. We share this with a lot of Parrot Head clubs in New England as well.
Great.
And so DaveMcKenneymusic.com is where you can learn more about Dave and his music and everything he's up to, and check that out. What advice, Dave, do you have for aspiring young songwriters? These are the folks, the boys and girls, or young ladies and gentlemen who just graduated from music school or just slung a guitar over their back after graduating high school and said, you know what, I'm going to give songwriting and music industry a shot. What's your advice for them?
Don't be afraid to be inspired by the musicians you love and what you listen to. Let that inspire your writing if that's a direction you want to go in. Write what you know. Write what you're passionate about. Look for stories. Look around you, or take life events and don't be afraid to share them. And some advice that was given to me: play whenever you can for anybody who will listen, and hopefully let the money take care of itself if it's something you want to make a living out of. But don't be afraid to just play whenever anybody will listen. Don't get caught up in big crowds, and deliver the exact, this is not original right here. This last statement is not original. This came from my biggest inspiration, and probably the guy that I think is one of the best songwriters ever, Jimmy Buffett, said, if it's 2 people, 200 people, 2,000 people, or 20,000 people, deliver the same show. Always deliver the same show with the same energy and same enthusiasm. And I'm not 100%, I have not always done that until I heard him say that. And then from that point on, I've always tried to do that.
Amen, brother. What a great answer. Hey, Dave, it's been great to have you on my show. Listen, there's a second part to this show. I put it up separately so I don't get muted by Facebook, even though I'm actually playing Dave's music and he's here giving me express permission to play his music.
Absolutely.
They actually might mute me and have. It's so frustrating. So I do it as a separate thing. You'll see it in my news feed next. And I'm playing songs off of Dave's first album, of course, 4 Hour Lunch Break. Some great drumming in there, and hopefully I do a good job. Before we sign out, just a preview for next week, we have Mr. Sonny Jim White on next week on Thursday, and we're looking forward to that interview. Thank you, Dave. Be well, and have a good fall.
Tim, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. It's been an honor and great interview and great time. I wish we had 2 hours. We could probably hang and chat. So maybe we have to do that sometime.
We should do it again. Definitely.
Right.
Just hit me up and we'll have you back on. Because
right.
Truth be told, I almost canceled my show last week, and then you graciously agreed to be on it. And now I have all kinds of guests lined up. So you restarted the engine for me. Thank you, Dave.
There you go. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.